Like an episode of Miss Fisher when she goes into did you wear like a special suit to make you feel more powerful when
Uh,
you were speaking to the Mother Superior?
I didn't actually get to speak to the Mother Superior. It was just to the short little nun that was at the desk. Who my favorite is the short little nun at the desk was there when my brother and I went last week, and she wears her mask like this. And she can't, because of her habit and because of the
Oh.
veil, she can't get it around her ears because her ears are covered.
They still wear habits?
The
What?
Little Sisters of the Poor, where like they're all in white. And then she was like, let me get my phone out. Hold on. And she's like reaching in. She's like, oh, so many pockets.
And underneath her wimple, she has colors in her hair.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Parallel Drives, a bi-monthly podcast where we talk about our past, our journeys, our friendship, and everything in between.
And anything we feel like.
Exactly. I'm one of your hosts, Joe DeLude II, and I am here with my very best friend, James Vincent. Hi, James.
Hello.
It's like we haven't talked for 20 minutes before
I
that.
know.
Like we're just seeing each other for the first time.
Oh, are you here? I didn't even know you were here.
Oh, oh,
Well,
wait.
hello.
Oh, I didn't see you there.
That was like Mr. Drag was with us for a moment.
Mm. You're gonna be like, ooh, I didn't see you there.
Yes, Joan. Yes, Joan.
Yes, June, I
That was
didn't
a bit
see
of a
you there.
compliment.
That is one of Mr. Drag's and my hopes that one day Joan Collins will notice Mr. Drag and that
Sweet.
I'll be able to just get like just the tiniest little clip of her saying something that I can put into a quarantini one day. Yes. So this week we are going to start off with a new segment that we're calling the Blue Plate Special. And so this section is going to be about something that was, you know, a little odd in our childhoods, or a memory that we had, or things that existed then that don't exist now.
Yeah.
And so we thought, and this came up after last episode we were talking, and this was something that you brought up that we should talk about, and I love it because it also refers to one of my favorite people in the world, the crazy curtain lady from Rhode Island.
Oh, you love the curtain lady.
I do. She just moved to Coventry, and she can't believe that this place is around the corner from her house. Um, so for those of you that haven't seen it,
Insert clip here.
I'm going to put a clip here.
Number one, I just moved to Coventry 7 months ago. And I had so many curtains. But you can't compare them to these quality, gorgeous curtains. When I found this place and I came in, I can't tell you what I did. I had to do the whole house. I had to. I mean, something like this. And the other ones I bought were so unbelievably beautiful. You could never find these curtains anywhere. Believe me, you could never. Look at this. Talk about something different. Oh, for the spring and summer.
She's amazing. I spent many a birthday with her. And she just always makes me very, very happy. But that brings up a topic of something that used to happen and still happens to this day, I think, in many households, was that our families would sort of redecorate for the season. And not just like Easter putting up decorations, Christmas putting up decorations, but it was, we need to change the curtains, we need to change the towels, we need to change the tissue paper cozy, we
The
need
rugs that were over the toilet seat.
rugs that were over the toilet seats, because everybody had a rug that was on a toilet seat.
Why would you ever want to put a rug on your toilet seat or around your toilet? It's disgusting.
I know. I'm in my bathroom now, the toilet is close to the shower, so my shower rug is kind of close to the toilet, so there's no going around that. But yeah, you think about that and you're like, wow, that's, especially if you're a man, there's a lot of splashback that happens, and that gets all in your rug. Rug. Why a rug with
With
liquid?
carpeting in the bathroom. And why did you need to change it every season? My mother and my grandmother and my aunt would get together and they would all do the houses together. It was like they would send out a call and all of a sudden all of the women of my family would gather together and they would clean the entire house
Yep.
and then take down everything. And like even the cleaning was crazy back then. Like I remember my mother all the time putting a towel like on a mop and like cleaning the walls and shit. And then she'd be like, take the curtains down, and her and my grandmother go back and forth like, Carol, ma, ma. And then one time, when they were about to do it, I was like older. I was like a teenager, and so I was like, I'm gonna get you like a Merry Maid as a Mother's Day gift or whatever it was. And they cleaned the entire house before the woman got there because they did not want her to come to a dirty house. But I'm not talking like they vacuumed. They cleaned all of things like the
Yep.
baseboards and like all that before the cleaning person got there. And I was like, this is just insane. And then the winter weight curtains
Yeah.
would go.
Which, I get the curtains sometimes because if you want to put up heavier curtains in the winter because houses weren't insulated as well back then and the windows weren't as good. So you needed heavier curtains to sort of keep the heat in.
And in the summer, you probably want something lighter so that doesn't stay.
Yeah, but it was just funny how everything would change in it. And when I mentioned that we were going to talk about this to my sister and my brother last week, ooh, just some more. When I mentioned this to my sister and my brother last week, my sister did say, "Oh yeah, and wash the walls." Like who
Yeah.
washes the walls? Although I during this quarantine, I did do a huge cleaning of my house, my
Yeah.
apartment, because I had the time, and I was like, I'm gonna do a big cleaning, like,
I did that as well.
and I did wash the walls.
I
Um,
did that as well.
but it needed to be done because it had been a while and I was like, I have the time. But imagine if you had that planned for every season. My favorite also was the toilet paper cozy, which was the plastic doll with the dress. Like
Yeah.
she was Southern Belle and she would have like the crocheted hat and the crocheted dress, but she was like
Insert one here.
yep. And then you would just put it right into the little thing of of the toilet paper and she would sit on top of your toilet bowl.
Yeah.
And they would change that too. Like it would all change. So I find it fascinating. My sister still does it to an extent, but she does it more with, I think, she doesn't do it so much with seasons, but she does it more with
Like
holidays.
the wreath on the door changes now. Like,
Yeah.
and is it a New England thing or is it like an everywhere thing?
I don't know. I was looking it up and all of these people on House, house.com,
No.
it's like this uh,
House?
House, HOUZZ.com. It's like a home website type of thing. And I was looking up to see if like people still do this. And there were a lot of people on House that were like, do you change your curtains? Every season people were like, yes.
I don't even like you can see my window behind me. I have no like I'm a terrible gay. I have no curtains.
I have one set of curtains and it's for my bedroom. And the only reason I have those is because it blocks out the light. Because if I have light in my room, I won't be able to sleep. Like as soon as
No, I have curtains in my bedroom. I do have blackout curtains in my bedroom.
yeah,
But I also like the architecture. Like I think there's something I like more about the frame
yeah,
of the window than I do about soft textiles
yeah. The
there.
only the only real like curtains that I would love are like sheer, like white sheer curtains, because you can kind of see through them. And then when the wind
A
blows,
hunger.
like billow in, and it's very Kate Bush, Wuthering Heights.
Oh, yeah, or the hunger. Remember in the hunger?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll tell you a story that I might get in trouble for, but um, Jeremy's mother, for a while, kept trying to give me beaded curtains to hang in my doorways because I think when people see my house, it does have like a witchy bohemian-y kind
Yeah.
of vibe. And so it was a very like lovely idea, but I'm also very specific about my aesthetic.
Yeah.
Well, I said a few times, like, no, thank you, no, thank you. And then I came home from work one day and they were both trying to hang these beaded curtains in my living room, which has a door on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, I said no, thank you. And like, but very forcefully. And I was like, nope, these are not going here. And I thought, what a strange, like, how did beaded curtains, like, I feel like it has been appropriated from somewhere or something. It just,
I mean, I don't mind a beaded curtain, but I like a real beaded curtain. Like they can't be those cheap.
no, Joe.
I mean, I wouldn't put them up in my house, but I can see how they work in
I'm
other
not here
people's
for a
houses.
beaded curtain,
In the
especially like plastic beads. No.
Oh no, not plastic beads, no. But in the 1970s, it worked really well. Like with the when it was like the wooden ones, the wooden beads.
I would love a macrame plant hanger. My mother also was like crafty.
I can make that for you.
But so my mother also would change, like, she would have cookie jars for every holiday or season that were in the shape of whatever the holiday was.
Yeah.
And her macrame hangings would change. And I don't know, I think like I understand the having pride in your house. And I think the other thing is like my life is very out and very social, but I feel like when we were growing up, like everything happened in the kitchen and everything happened
Yeah.
in the we went from people's house to house to house. And so I think there was something like my family saw each other multiple times a week, like my whole family. And I
Oh,
know your family was the same way.
yeah.
So I think it was probably also one of those things that like the women did together because it's what they did, but it was more like, oh, we're all ironing each other's curtains and we're spending the time together, we're telling stories, and then we're done. So we're playing cards and we're all cooking. And you
Yeah.
know, I think those times were so amazing because I grew up with my family around constantly. And for people that didn't grow up with that, I think it's very different. But I think the home was really a place where family gathered constantly.
Yeah.
And so I took pride in it. And your toilet paper cozy was the talk of the town.
Yeah, I mean that's I mean, and just the towels in the bathroom and the rugs in the bathroom, like they all changed colors and they were all appropriate to the color of whatever the season was. So we'd go like,
Dark green in the winter for my
yeah,
mother. And
I was
yellow.
trying to say we'd go dark green in the winter, something lighter in the spring, maybe a white. I'm not sure, but yeah, I remember that and just how the color palette would change. But yeah, I did a lot of macrame as a kid. Those were some of my Christmas gifts. I would make macrame, like macrame hangings that would say with the beads that would say Noel.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Oh, those. I also did macrame. My favorite thing to give as a gift was I would make a macrame owl.
oh, I just made one. So when I did my installation for the Radical Interconnected Festival, was that last year? I think it was last year or the year before. It was exploring my childhood from when I was born, 1971, to like 1980. And one of the things that I remember is macrame, and especially a macrame owl. So I made a macrame owl for that, especially because it was very expensive to go and buy one.
Was it the hanging one?
Yeah.
Oh, well, my specialty was I did one that looked like a bird that was perched.
Oh,
And
perched on the thing. Yeah.
yeah, and I would brush the macrame out so it was like feathers, and then it was like a thing. But my pièce de résistance that I was so known for were pantyhose people.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I love to give a gift to someone where maybe I would make a pair of pantyhose into Santa Claus, but I love to give my aunts and uncles and my parents pantyhose people that look like them. And maybe they were sitting in a felt tub with cotton fill bubbles. Uh, and then my crafting career came to a tragic end when preparing for one Mother's Day. I was knitting felt letters that would spell out something like mother. And I stepped on the needle. But as a fat child, the needle went all the way in and stuck into the bone.
Oh.
And I was so fat when I got to the emergency room, they had to use like an adult tourniquet. And it was embarrassing for some reason. And I never crafted after that.
Aw.
It was I just go fetal from my tragic craft injury.
Every time you see a needle, you're like, yeah. Or macrame, you
It
just
will
curl up in a ball.
embroidery floss. Yeah.
Uh,
But pantyhose insert a photo for people who don't know what pantyhose people are, because I was telling Jeremy the story and he had no idea what I was talking
I
about.
will. Yeah, you could just go fetal. Like you can't go into a Michaels because it just brings back such bad memories.
Yeah, and I won't go into a Hobby Lobby because they're
Well,
monsters.
we shouldn't go into a Hobby Lobby.
No, they're terrible people.
Nobody should go into a Hobby Lobby.
Don't
Ever.
go to Hobby Lobby.
If you love any of your LGBTQIA plus people, you will never shop in a Hobby Lobby, no matter what. Um, uh, I have a funny story. So when I was working on Wicked in San Francisco, Teal Wicks was our Elphaba.
Mm-hmm.
And she's very hippy dippy, 1960s, 1970s. She sort of has that hippie vibe. I did a whole photo shoot of her as Janis Joplin and Edie Sedgwick, and and so I was telling her about macrame and all the things that we used to make as macrame and all the things we used to have in our house that was macrame. Like we had we had a macrame Christmas tree, which was the most amazing.
Yeah,
I wish we still had that. But I was telling her, oh yeah, and my sister had like you can make a macrame seat that hung from the ceiling. And I was like,
oh, that was major. That's
if you had a macrame seat, you were someone. And I said, and you could have like macrame table that would hang beside it. Well, in her head, she imagined a macrame dining table with macrame seats hanging around it. And I was like, that would be incredible. I would die.
I feel like the next time you have a huge loft space, we're getting all together and we're doing macrame hanging dining room.
So, as a present for her going away, I was like, I'm gonna make her a macrame table. And I hadn't done macrame since
That's like a huge undertaking.
Oof, let me tell you, it was a lot more work than I remember it being.
Was it brown?
No, I did it green as like for Elphaba. And I found the instructions and I got like everything. It was also very expensive, like to get that like glass, circular glass thing and to get all the supplies. But I would do it, and my room was down in the basement of the theater. And the last cue of the show before after she would melt, she would come down and get changed and go back up. So she would come to my room. So I would work on it throughout the show, and I'd be like sitting there like braiding every time I had a break, and it was hanging from my ceiling, but I would have to take it down every show, hide it, and then she would like come do her cue, and then I could put it back up. But it was amazing. It was so much fun, and I was like, wow, I forgot how easy it is. Like once you get into it,
yeah,
how easy and also how therapeutic.
I'm so excited about macrame right now.
I know. We're just like, everybody go out and get some macrame, especially this time. Like this is the perfect time to be doing some macrame.
Oh my God. We need to do like witch and stitch crafting circle. Ooh. Where we invite 13 exclusive people to come in and learn a craft or teach a craft each week.
I love that.
If you're interested in being part of our exclusive Witch and Stitch, then put it in the comments below.
Hashtag Witch and Stitch.
Comments. Put it in the comments.
Yes, that would be amazing. I would love that. I will teach how to do a macrame owl. I think I still have the instructions. So
I am going to call it macrame.
Macrame sounds much more witchy that way. Macrame. Nice. Cool. So
and I want shells in my macrame as well.
Yeah, well you have to drill the holes in shells though. It's very hard to find shells that have holes in them now.
Well, when we're at Michael's, I'll pick some up.
Yeah, you need a really fine drill.
But I'm gonna make my shell macaroni to tie in the macaroni wreaths that my mother still insists on putting up at Christmas, even though I made them in kindergarten. The top of my mother's Christmas tree is a papier-mâché Virgin Mary with yarn hair and googly eyes that I made when I was 7 years old.
Yes, I remember that.
My family calls it Scary Mary. My mother refuses to let it go.
I love that. I think my family would still have that. If my parents were still living in the home that we grew up in, we would still have all of that stuff because they did have all of that stuff until they had to move out of that and they moved into a smaller place. Like it was just amazing. My one of my favorite things was to go down into the cedar closet, which was a closet made out of cedar that my dad built in the basement.
You have to explain that to everyone.
Yeah, because that's where you would store things.
Yes, a cedar closet.
Yeah.
A closet made of cedar.
Yeah.
Moths away.
But it was always this special place, and I always thought like it would like transport me somewhere, kind of like the like I had another closet upstairs that I always thought that if I went into the back of it, I would end up in Narnia. And I always felt like that in the cedar closet, but it also had the most amazing things in it. It had like all of this old clothes that they never wore anymore. And
Christian skirts.
it was no, it was remember it was the Halston-esque dress that my mom wore for my sister's wedding that Dana wore out the night that we went to the 70s night at Gerardo's that we talked about, what, the last episode?
It was, yes.
Yeah, that was from the cedar closet. And it just was this magical place for me. And sometimes I would just go into it and just like hide in the back for no reason.
I do wonder if kids still have that sense of imagination and awe. Like there was something about having to entertain yourself
Yeah.
when there were only three channels, you know, like when there were your family, like I never had time alone. And when I had time alone, I would just go and explore things and I would find these like boxes of my mom's that had like I remember one thing of my mom's that I was like obsessed with was she had a sequins bow tie. Like it was
I'm
these
sorry, what?
see like it was a bow it was a sorry it was a tie
Sequins bow tie?
made of like paillettes or like sequins and then it had like a neck it was like a necklace but it looked like a tie and I was like where would my mother have ever worn this or she had like a sequins snake that had like fake ruby like paste eyes
Yeah.
that and I was like where did Carol Vincent ever wear this? I
Yeah.
just couldn't imagine it, you know? It was
Yeah.
like not I don't know, and I would slip it on when no one was around and maybe curl my lashes. I spent a lot of time with my mom's eyelash curler. Like I would go in the bathroom all the time and like curl, curl,
Eyelash
curl.
curler. Yeah.
Probably the reason I'm a makeup artist.
Yeah, yeah, we didn't have those things. But I wonder because we didn't have access to the internet and our video games were much simpler back then. So we did rely a lot on our imagination and the things that we saw in movies.
Yeah.
That's sort of what we kind of based on. Like Narnia, I was convinced I was getting to Narnia at some point because we had that closet that had all the coats in it.
Yeah.
And in the back were all of the slides because we used to have this huge thing. And my father had built with all these little like squares in it that all of the trays of slides would fit in. And I was convinced that one day I would go through the coats to where the slides were and the slides wouldn't be there and I'd end up in Narnia. Never worked, but it was worth a try.
I only cared about Narnia because of the White Queen. Like honestly, I thought the kids were so annoying. I was like,
And
why would you want to leave Narnia?
if you read all of the books, the kids are annoying. Like
Yeah, and honestly, it's like Christian brainwashing. When I was young, I loved them, but now I'm like,
now you realize what it's talking about, but the concept of it was nice.
yeah.
And
Although I read a lot of, I used to read so much as a kid. I think that that sense of imagination was so important, you know? I
yeah,
hope,
I'm wondering if now, because kids are having so much time on their hands, that and it's not like during your free time you're going to go play a video game or chat with your friends because there's so much of that now. And I wonder if there's going to be that sort of return to being creative. Like I see it around here, but just because it's the parents of the people
I agree.
here, of the kids that are here that are like that. They are encouraging their kids. Like I got that one painting of Mr. Drag from one of my friend's kids, like
Oh,
dropped off at my house one day, and I was like, oh.
My niece is like my niece is probably the one that I can gauge, and like she just turned 12, and she like every year as gifts we make sure that we give her projects, like, and she and like when she's with my mom anyway, like she is always painting or drawing or making jewelry or making lip gloss, or like
Yeah.
she definitely has that curiosity and um I don't know, that drive to create,
Yeah.
which I think is so important. And now like she's gotten to music and makeup, so I'm like, oh, hopefully soon I'll be interesting because I've always been
Well, it's like Ange
uninteresting.
and Tony's daughter, Soph. Like she's always, I mean, it's because she has two artists
She
at
has two very creative
who
parents.
also work from home. So she's always been around that, and she always is doing these projects. And every Thanksgiving, we would all get together, and one of their friends, Chrissy from New York, would come up, and every year we would come up with a different craft. So like one year is like bracelets, like the friendship bracelets, and then we did one year was all buttons, badges, and we made like tons. And Tony came up with this whole thing where like you just had to tell him what you wanted, and he had this whole template on his computer where he
Of
could just
course
take
it
the
did.
photos and put it in, and then have it print out so that they were like you just have to cut them and they were perfect. And I love that about her, where sometimes she will just be like, hey, I'm just going to go upstairs and craft.
Yeah.
She calls it, I'm just going to go upstairs and craft. And whether it's painting or drawing or doing whatever, like she just takes moments out of her day to do that. And I love that that's part of her life.
Yeah. I think it's important for developing imagination. I also think that what I have discovered in COVID times and quarantine is that people who have more imagination have definitely been more adaptable
Yeah.
through this. Like my friends who are very structured, very 9 to 5, very, set in their ways. Maybe they fill their time with a lot of television and things like that. This has been very difficult for them. Where my friends who are more creative um, have it's been easier for them to adapt because I think they have different ways of filling their time, and like it's also very cathartic. Like there's something about art and there's something about crafting and making something that you're pulling from. I feel like you're pulling from your emotions and you're
Yeah.
pulling from those places. I think cutting art programs for in schools is such a terrible thing, like because for me my art classes and my crafting, my mom would pay for me to take crafting classes. My first business ever was like Dina Poliata, and I started making spoon rests when we were in like third grade. I don't know, it just made me always think that could do, like the ability to create
Yeah.
makes you think that you can make anything possible in a way.
Yeah. Well, and it's part of that imagination, because then you create these worlds, you create these characters, you create these things around you that then can actually manifest at some point in your life. I mean, with us, like, getting dressed up, going to Dollar a Pound and getting all these like costume clothing and getting all dressed up and creating these characters that we would do and performing at the Chapel Blanc and doing all of that. Who knew that years later, like that would all manifest in our lives in different ways in
They get prepared us for it. Like I
yeah,
remember going to Junkman's daughter when were living in Atlanta and being like, I'm doing a fashion show. And everybody was like, okay, cool. I think you were working there then and I wasn't. And we put together a fashion show from all of these different stores where we styled all the clothes, picked all the models, did all the makeup. We didn't know how to do it. We just knew we
yeah,
knew how to do it. I remember doing windows, like I loved doing window displays and I had never done it, but I just loved the idea of creating this narrative and these characters.
yeah. I was just talking with the Heidi, the woman that owns the store that I've been working at, and she was talking about the windows and how she wants to change, and the windows up at every so often, not all the time, but every so often. And we were talking about what we could do. And like she was talking about something and it sparked this idea in me. And I was like, oh my God, it's like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, but not Alice in Wonderland, the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. It's like this other, like I just started going off on this tangent of it. And I was like, oh yeah, I do enjoy doing this part of it. I do enjoy that. You know, I've always enjoyed that.
My when I was young, from when I was 14, I worked at a drugstore, and it was owned by two men who were great mentors to me. And the second one just passed away at like 90 years old. And I was thinking how crazy it was that they would pay this like obviously gay kid not only to be the stock boy and work the register or whatever, but they would pay me hourly to decorate the store. And everyone before me, like they would tell me all the time, they were like, Glenn would just hang up the cardboard Santa, but I would do like snow displays in the windows. And like I remember like, and where I don't know how I had the confidence because I'm a terrible visual artist, but I remember like building a Statue of Liberty, like convincing them they needed to buy a mannequin because I needed a Statue of Liberty for the 4th of July. And they went out and they did it, you
Yeah.
know. And I think just having that creativity and that imagination, but also having people who foster it and to support it is so important. And now, like, I use those skills every day,
Yeah.
imagining what makeup I'm designing or how I'm connecting to a client or, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So any parents out there who are listening, encourage your kids in imagination.
Teach them to macrame.
Yeah, teach them how to macrame, teach them how to needlepoint, teach them how to make balloon animals, whatever it is. Like teach them how to be creative. It's amazing what will come out of it. So we're going to move on to our second topic of this week, which is not so uplifting, but I think also very important when we talked about whether this should be a topic that we talk about. You said, yes, this is a very important topic to talk about.
I did say that.
Yes, and it's a serious topic, and so just to preface it, it may be a little triggering for some people, but I think it's also a very important topic to talk about, and especially now with what we're going through, and actually having had this whole discussion in the Blue Plate special, which went a lot further than I imagined it going, and talking about imagination and being creative and finding ways to cope with situations. This next section we're going to talk about is depression.
Yeah.
And this is something that we have both dealt with in our lives. I don't think I'm as forthcoming about it with people, I think, as you have been, because you on your platform, and connecting with the people that you connect with, I think, you've had to bring certain things up to connect with these people, which is very important. And I don't think that a lot of people that know me know that it is something that I deal with constantly.
Yeah. I think outwardly facing, you are not as transparent with some of your things as I am.
Yeah. And it's not because I don't think it's important to be transparent, but also I'm very specific about how I address certain things. There's some things that I'm very open with and feel very comfortable with. And there are some things that it's not that I don't feel comfortable with it, but I also don't. How do I say this? I don't want to get everybody coming at me with all of this stuff like, we love you, we love you, we love you, we love you. I know that you do.
Right.
And so I don't feel like I need to put it out there because that's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking for you to tell me that everything is going to be okay. Sometimes I feel it will be, and sometimes I don't. Um, so, for my good friends, they know that I deal with this, and maybe even they don't know that I deal with it as much as I do, because also a lot of times I don't want to burden people, and I also don't want people to worry about me.
And I think people see you and they see pretty, they see funny, they see outgoing. I just think there's something about you that people don't necessarily get to know the real you.
Hmm.
I and I'm not judging whether it's a positive or negative, but I think that one of the things that makes us very different people is that sometimes people love you, but they only know the surface.
Yeah.
And so they don't get to see, or maybe they don't take the time to get to know those deeper pieces of who you are and what makes you up. And so I think that I have witnessed it in your life where you have people that are your best friends at the time, or the people you spend the most amount of time with, and they don't really know you,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and I think part of that is you guarding some of those things, and part of it is that people are so impressed by the veneer sometimes that they don't really want to know, you know,
Yeah.
the more difficult
And
thing.
also because for most of my life, I've always been in this position. Like I've been a manager, I've been, a designer. I've been in these positions where I have to keep it together and I have to portray something very specific in in the communities that I'm in. And it's been hard, and it's hard to sort of break down with people. I also don't feel comfortable breaking down with very many people. Um, and I think that's part of when you talk about depression. I think that's something that a lot of people feel like they don't want to be a burden on someone, because depression doesn't, it's not just like a day. It's not like, oh, I don't feel good today. It spans over time. And so when you're feeling depressed for a long period of time, the last thing you want to do is burden your friends with this day after day after day after day. Because then you feel like, do I want to be that friend that just, every time you talk to me, I'm just sad and I'm complaining about things and I just don't know how to deal with it. So you start to internalize it. And then you get to places where you're like, well, I really need to talk to someone, but I don't feel like I can talk to anybody, because you now have put that burden on yourself of not being, not wanting to burden other people. So you've now put the burden on yourself to not talk about it.
And I think there are so many stigmas around depression. And I think that, when I Google the definition of depression, it says like a feeling of despondency. Sure. And I think that's kind of how we grew up. Like, if you were depressed, you were sad.
Yeah.
And that's a little selfish. Why would you be sad around other people? Put a smile on, put your brave face on. I think we were raised in families, especially with mothers and fathers, but I think we were raised at a time where like men held their feelings and women protected their feelings. Like
Yeah.
the worst thing for my mother or my grandmother would be that someone knew their business.
Yeah.
And so the idea that of depression was like, oh, it's dramatic and it's sad and it inconveniences everyone around you. And then as you come into your own, I think especially for a lot of queer kids growing up, or a lot of people that are in the margins, you start to realize depression is medical. It's a medical illness. It isn't just how you're feeling. It's physical, and it manifests itself in different ways for different people. And I think that when I started to realize that depression was much more than just feeling sad and affected me in ways that were beyond inconveniencing other people, you know, that's when I started really looking and thinking about it. And it's one of the reasons I studied social work in school. You know, it was important for me to be able to help other people, um, to not feel that, because I think that undiagnosed depression or suffering from depression in silence makes it even more difficult. And like I think that's the other difference between the two of us, is you hold so much of your so many of your feelings
Mm,
in a way, even though you're very outwardly social and all of these things, and I fully broadcast whatever it is that I'm feeling at whatever time. And at 47 years old, in this space that I'm in, I feel completely comfortable speaking about, you know, so many things, because I think that it also does a disservice. It does a disservice to you when you are feeling like you need to hold in or hide depression or whatever anxiety or whatever emotion it is. But it also does a disservice to the people around you, because you cannot, um, if you're not being able, if you're not sharing your authentic self, I think that that gets in the way of real relationships and real connections. For me, anyway, I'm not judging you with it. I'm just saying for me, if I can't share my lows, how do I show you my highs? You
right.
know,
Yeah. No, yes, I totally agree with that. And you know, it's it's difficult to talk about it because, you know, I went through a period when we were living in New York where I would get depressed every year around the holidays. And I couldn't figure it out because I was like, I love the holidays. I love Thanksgiving. I love Christmas. Why do I get depressed? Why? You know, and I started seeing a therapist, and this therapist was not the right therapist for me. But at the time, I didn't think, well, I should just go find someone else. I'm like, this is the person that was recommended to me. This is the person that I'm going to stick with. You know, I remember the first day going in, it was an early morning, and I went in with a coffee. And he told me, he was like, I would prefer if you don't come in with a drink. And I'm like, well, it's early in the morning and I'm just having my morning, like, this is my morning coffee because this is early and then I'm going to work straight after this. And he was like, well, I just find that people use drinks as distractions. So when you don't want to talk about something, you take a drink. Now that should have been the sign right there to be like, okay, I'll see you later. Um, but I didn't, and I stuck with him for a year. And I didn't learn anything. I didn't learn why I was going through this. He wouldn't talk. He was one of those therapists that wouldn't talk and would just make me talk. And so there were moments of weird, um, uncomfortable silence. And so I just start making things up to talk about. Um, and finally, after a year, I was like, this has gotten me nowhere. Um, And so I still don't know why that was happening. It doesn't really happen that much anymore around the holidays. It happens a lot. And I think because also, you know, moving up here, as much as it has been wonderful for so many things, I live a solitary life up here. You know, I have a lot of friends. I do a lot of performances and things like that. But, um, you know, I have one of my best friends up here, which is great. Um, you know, but she also has her life and her family, and which is also very busy. And dating is horrible up here, and so there's the more that I'm up here, the less I believe that there's going to be that person that I can find up here. And so there's this sense of isolation and a sense of loneliness, and wanting to share it with someone and feeling like that it's not going to happen. And then having this quarantine, which then makes you even more isolated, because at least before I could like hang out with my friends, or I could at least try and go out on a date with someone, which was never that successful, but there was that opportunity. And also I was working a lot, so there was there was stuff that was keeping me busy. But then not having those things to keep me busy, and being isolated, and not having anyone to even not even having a roommate to hang out with, um, sort of perpetuates the idea of this. Um, and it continues to build up. And there are nights where it gets really bad, and days when it gets really bad, and days when it's really good. um but right now I've been commissioned to do this public artwork, and it's been a chore to do it. It's a learning experience, because I'm working with media that's not something that I'm really comfortable with. So I'm learning that way. But it's also a chore because I can't bring myself to invest in it. I can't bring myself to be excited about it. And there are extenuating circumstances, my dad's health and everything, that are making it worse. But yeah, sometimes it feels, I can relate to the people that talk about it. I don't think it's like the cartoon cloud that hovers over your body, that we always see in the commercials, but I feel like when people say it's like a weight on you, it is like a weight on you. Like you just feel like you can't get up. You can't, like, sometimes I feel like it's like Dorothy in the Golden Girls when she had
Say that.
yeah,
I can't even wash my hair.
yeah, I can't even lift my hands to wash my hair. Like sometimes I can't even lift my hand to like paint, to pick up a brush and paint. It feels like too much of an effort to do that.
Well, there's so much to unpack in this discussion. And I'm going to urge anyone who is listening or watching, 1 in 15 adults, I'm going back to my social worker days here, and the numbers might have changed. I haven't been in school in years, but 1 in 15 adults is suffering from a form of depression. And I think it's like 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 adults will have a period of depression in their lifetime.
Yeah.
But depression manifests itself in different ways for different people. And it has physical components, and it has spiritual components and emotional components. And the thing with depression is, because it manifests itself in different ways, we tend to attach it to different events in our life, or different emotions, or different seasons. But sadness is not depression, and grief is not depression. And if you are in this situation where you are physically not able to move forward, like for me, depression needs treatment. It needs acknowledgement, and it needs treatment. And it's figuring out what those treatments are for you, whether that is medication, or psychotherapy, or, self-help. It isn't as simple as like, I'm sad, so I spoke to a friend.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm not a therapist, and I'm not claiming to be, but I think that we are in a time right now where things like anxiety and depression are so heightened. Because for me, depression and my manifestation is also always about a lack of control. And when I cannot see what's happening or control what's happening, it brings me in these different directions. And I think that that's a big part of it. Lack of socialization, lack of intimacy, lack of interaction, lack of, pursuit of the things that make you happy, lack of opportunity. Those things might make you sad, or they might trigger a depression. And it is, I think, hopefully we're coming into a time where there's not a stigma attached to speaking to someone and finding help and working your way through these manifestations and discovering, if it is depression, how you're going to treat it and move forward. But I don't think it's anything to take lightly or anything to judge quickly. It is, for many people, a lifetime of managing. And if you are someone who deals with the combination of anxiety and depression, it is, I think, important that you step back and you do some evaluation. And there are resources that you can find online to look and say, is this something that I need to do? Am I in a manic episode? Am I in a depressed state? And figure out what the tools are around you to move forward. It is like, depression is something that requires someone who is feeling completely inactive and unable to move forward, to take action. And that, I think, is what makes it very difficult. When you are in your depressed state, you probably need to take action to move out of it, but everything around you seems impossible. And so that's why you need to develop support systems. But I think self-assessment sometimes is a great first step, and can help you figure out how to pursue actual help and with an expert.
Yeah.
It isn't just your bartender or your friend listening to you. It is, how am I managing this situation and manifestation of something that is very physical as well as emotional.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, is it takes over like all aspects of your life, and I think that a lot of people probably have been going through, instances of this during this quarantine, because you have been cut off from the outside world. You can't do the things that you normally do. And at the beginning, it was really great because you had all of this time to do all of these things, whether you're creative or not. Like, oh, I can spend time with my family. I can work on these paintings. I can, catch up on all this TV that I wanted to watch. And then after a while, you're like, okay, I've done that. And now what do I do? And figuring out how to maneuver your way through it. And I think that we are always so busy that we don't always address the issues that we have,
And
because
now that you don't have those distractions,
yeah, and there are none of those distractions now. So you can only watch so much TV, and then finally you're like, all right, I think I've watched enough. Um, and doing a little research on this, and finding out just numbers, and it's none of it will be surprising. There's 264 million people worldwide that have had at least one episode of depression throughout their lives. And of course, it's much higher in teenagers, which all of us have been teenagers, so we know what that's like. And it's even worse now. I mean, we didn't have social media then, so we didn't have to worry about everybody being in our business, even people we didn't know. And just seeing how the numbers have gone up and up and up. And you talk for a minute.
I think it's also internal and external factors. And I think that's another thing that sometimes people don't necessarily understand or identify. It isn't just your mood, it isn't just your emotions, it isn't just your memory or your feelings of isolation. Sometimes it's impacted by the things that are happening around you the Black Lives Matter movement has triggered real depression and anxiety in a lot of my Black friends because they are being forced to not only face all of this stuff that's changing in the world, but really deal with some of the things that maybe they haven't dealt with. Pride every year is such an important moment for so many queer people, but it also brings up the fact that you have to deal with and unpack all of these things from your past. And so what happens is you see these people that are very happy and doing all of these things, and then there tends to be a major depression that happens after that moment. The holidays, Christmas is like the number one, or Thanksgiving is like the number one holiday for suicide, because these moments that tend to be more monumental, that hold some weight, tend to really showcase, you know, what you're going through, and people start to feel very isolated. But I think for me, um, what I have found in quarantine is that my depression uh, is more manageable maybe than my anxiety. And the two are very related. You know, I went through a few weeks of really deep depression, and but my anxiety is constant. It's every day.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you know, I'm a huge advocate of therapy, and I'm a huge advocate of psychotherapy, and I'm a huge advocate of medication. But I'm not doing any of those things because for me, I thought that I had found tools to manage my anxiety and depression on my own. And what quarantine did for me is really show me that I have just pushed my anxiety and depression into different um, creations. You know what I mean? So instead of people seeing my anxiety as an inability to pick up the phone and call them, they think it's because I'm so busy because I'm on the road all the time.
Right.
And I think that for many people, being isolated has triggered these depressions because all of a sudden you're realizing things are feeling overwhelming, or you're feeling disconnected, or you're feeling alone or isolated, and there's no distraction,
Yeah.
but there's no judgment or embarrassment in that. And I think that's the other thing with you is you are among those people who feel like you need to compartmentalize or show different parts of yourself to people, or are undeserving of certain things. And I think that this time in isolation, when so much is being taken away from your usual and your actual, it starts to make you feel even more, um, I don't know, you start to lay into those base emotions.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage you or anyone who's feeling those things to say, like, how can I put a plan in place where I'm taking different steps forward to alleviate depression?
Taco.
Thanks, babe. Oh,
Because I needed tacos. I'm
okay,
starving.
sorry.
That was a good way to alleviate it.
Yeah.
When you get a taco delivery, that's a perfect.
Tacos definitely alleviate.
Tacos definitely alleviate depression.
This is, you know, we're touching on this in our personal way, and it's very anecdotal,
Yeah.
but I think that you have to address this. And for any person that might be going through this right now, you need to put a plan in place. And if that means picking up a phone or sending an email to a professional, that is always my
Yeah.
recommendation, because as much as your friends or family love you, they might not be capable or qualified to, definitely not qualified to diagnose you,
Yeah.
and maybe not prepared to help you pull yourself out and give you the tools to take yourself out of whatever it is that you're in. And again, I'm not a therapist. I just have a lot of opinions, and that's what podcasts are for. We are experts on everything because we have a podcast.
That's true. No, and it is something that I've been thinking about, you know, and I think also with my dad's health, lately, I think that's brought up a lot more because there's a lot more emotion that's come up through that. Um, and so it's sort of pushed all of this stuff that's sort of been lying there up onto the surface a little bit more. So
And grief
yeah,
is a trigger for depression, but
yeah,
they're not the same thing. And
no,
I think that right now you are in a state of uncertainty and grief and all of these other things. And so it's amplifying the depression.
yeah,
I think what you've got to do is kind of unpack them separately and see how you, because when you break them down, maybe it makes it easier to say, how am I moving forward?
yeah, because it is a combination of all things. Like it is a combination of grief, it's a combination of anxiety about not knowing what it's going to be like for the future. Like what, having this plan that I had planned for these 2 years where I was so excited about it. And I was like, yes, this is what finally I have a plan and I'm at a place that is perfect. Like my financial place is like stable and like I've got all of these things. Like I just paid off my car. Like that is amazing to be able to pay off your car. And I had this whole plan of like paying off my car and, you know, not paying anything for a few months. And then at the end of the year, like going out, selling my car or trading it in, whatever, and getting a 4-wheel drive because I was like, I'm not dealing with another winter in New England without having a 4-wheel drive vehicle because I can't take sliding all over these roads.
You want to put chains on?
Look out for black ice. Uh, so, and then just to be able, like, it was such a good feeling when I got that notice and got my title in the mail. And then you start to think about it and you're like, yeah, this was what my plan was. And now I'm going to be stuck with this Toyota Corolla for a while. But I think it's a combination of all of those things sort of pushing in on each other, but they're all separate things. They're all different things. They're all things that need their own attention and need to be addressed in their own way.
I think that, there are I made some notes while you were talking, just little things for people who might be in this unprecedented time dealing with depression and, you know, little things that you can do before you reach out to get help from a qualified professional, or do some analysis to see if it's a true depressive state and you need to do that. And I just made some notes like, don't panic, you know. Uh, I think that that's the first thing. Like sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves to feel a certain way or appear a certain way to other people or put a smile on our face the way we were raised. Like it's critical that you kind of keep yourself calm. And maybe it is just sleep that you need, or maybe it is just interaction that you need, or physical contact, or sex, or whatever it is that will help you out. Number two, know your triggers, and the signs. So if you know that seeing a certain relative or a conversation with an ex or, you know, drinking a certain amount is going to trigger you, then try and avoid those. And also know the signs that you're slipping into that state. Like for me, I know when I start to play certain songs over and over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to get into a state where I have to take an action. Number three, remember that depression is an illness. Do not, this isn't just you being in a bad mood. This isn't just you being dramatic. This isn't just you being like, histrionic. This is something that is physical for a lot of people and physiological and requires that attention. Number four, I think this one is so important. Remember that it won't last. Like there are ways that you can treat depression. There are ways that you can pull yourself out of depression and manage it until you are able to make it to someone who can give you more advice. And then, my other tip, self-care. Sometimes it's just being able to step in and say like, this is what I need to do right now, and pay attention to those things that make you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And the last step is, know when to ask for help. And sometimes it is a conversation with a friend or a partner, but sometimes it's looking for professional help. And like these are just my quick notes that I was making while Joe was talking, and I was trying to listen and like put my ideas down. And I don't think that these are the end all be all ways. I'm not a therapist. This is a really heavy topic to discuss in a podcast, but I hope that people realize that you're not alone. You, Joe, are not alone in feeling this way. And I think that that is one of the toughest parts of depression is you feel like no one else in the world understands or can connect to you at that point, or or you feel uncomfortable burdening people with what's happening.
Yeah.
And, those little steps that I gave are good momentum forward, I guess. Um, but this is real, and for me, it's a lifetime of figuring it out and finding people to help me through it, and being able to talk about and share the parts of myself that are not so perfect. Uh, I think make it much more manageable and much more bearable, and hopefully help a few other people along the way. So, I have implemented some self care methods that help me through. A lot of it is schedule and organization, um, but also movement and breath work. And, I'm a huge advocate of marijuana and microdosing. I am a huge advocate of people figuring out ways to connect and heal themselves away from Western medicine, but that's not for everybody. But journaling, breath work, things that make me more aware of myself and my moods and my mental and physical states are tools that I can use until I'm able to find the right therapist. And I'm not saying that what works for me will work for everybody, but I think that because as long as I feel like I'm doing something to be better, I feel like sometimes that's enough.
Yeah.
Because I definitely have those Dorothy days where sometimes I can't even wash my hair, you know?
Yeah. And one of the things that I found that makes me feel really good is drumming.
Hmm.
So I have a couple of different drums, but I have this one hand drum that I've been using, and which there's something about it that I don't know if it changes the frequency, but there's something about it, and especially when I drum in front of myself, that really helps sort of clear things up a lot. And that's been a really nice little savior in all of this. But yeah, we will put some links to some websites, some places, phone numbers or whatever that you can call at the end of this podcast. So if you're watching it, you'll be able to see that, because we do want you to go out and, if you're feeling this way, to get some help. And we think it's important for you to acknowledge that, and there's nothing wrong with saying that you need help, and it's not a sign of weakness, it's actually a sign of strength, because that you can put yourself in that position. So that was our point about talking about this week, is to open it up so that you don't feel as scared, don't feel as bad, or don't feel like you're a burden on
That
your.
you're alone.
Hmm?
You don't feel like you're alone.
Yeah, so you don't feel like you're alone, because millions of people all over the world are going through this as well. So we're going to end on a good note.
Thank God. Wow.
Thank God. So we started on
I want to tell one funny story about depression, because I was like feeling depressed one time, and Jeremy's way of dealing with my depression is he screams at me until I'm not depressed anymore, which actually works sometimes. And he'll be like, "You think you're the only one who's sad?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'm ready to go."
Oh, and then he brings you a taco.
Are you going to edit that out?
The taco?
Yeah.
No.
Like, how lucky am I that I just got ordered tacos?
I know, that's very
I haven't eaten today because I was shooting. It was my first day back at work, like shooting. And like, so I just usually assume that there's food on set, so I didn't eat. And then I came home and so I haven't eaten today, and I've had a few drinks in the podcast.
Oops. Oops. Yeah, I ate before. It was smart. But so we're going to end like we normally end on something that brought us joy. So I'll start off this week. I think you started off last week. So I'm going to start off this week with something that has brought me joy. And I know this is going to seem really simple, but so, my dad's been really sick, and my sister said, you need to come home and see him. So I went last Wednesday to go, and they had said that we'd be able to go to the home. He was in the hospital, he got transferred to the home, and they had said we'd be able to come in, and then they were saying we couldn't come in. So I was basically stuck at my sister's for most of the day. And I thought, I have nothing to do, and I was like, I'll just watch some TV. And my sister was working because she's been working from home, and her husband Manny was off working his job. So it's like, I'm just gonna watch some TV.
We really are just like telling everything about our families. Like we're using names and
I
shit.
know, and my family listens to this, so they're totally no, but they love it. So I was like, I need something, I need something to something that's like fun and isn't going to like, I don't really need to get involved in it. And there was this show on Netflix that kept coming up advertised to me. And I was like, ugh, called Say I Do. And I was like, I don't need to watch another damn wedding show. And I was like, and I don't like wedding shows anyway. And then the thing came up again, and there was a little preview, and it said from the creators of Queer Eye. And I was like, well, I love Queer Eye, and it's 3 gay guys, and they do weddings, so maybe it'll just be the thing that I need to sort of take my mind off of this.
A heavy show.
I have to tell you, so I binge watched all of it in 2 days. One day at my sister's, and then the other day when I came back home. I have to say, I cried through the whole thing, and I think it was a really important because I needed to cry anyway.
A cathartic cry.
Yeah, but it was a joyful cry, but at the same time, it got out all of this emotion that I needed to get in me. But it was just such a wonderful show. Like, it's one of those shows that makes you feel good about humanity. The 3 guys who are in it, Jeremiah, Gabriella, and Ty, they are everything you want your gay host to be. They have such a great relationship with each other. They know each other, they kid around with each other, and each of them has moments with these people in the show. These guys have emotional connections, and they're very empathetic to the people that are there, and they have different connections, and they really try to help. And there was this one episode that really hit me, and it was a man and a woman that were getting married. They lived out in the country. He had this crazy farming accident where he was like basically like broke every bone in his body.
Episode.
Huh?
That's my next episode, but tell me what happens.
Oh, well, I'm just going to tell you this one part about it where she was diagnosed with a learning disability, but no one ever told her what her disability was. And so for her entire life, she just felt like she was stupid because she couldn't read a book. And so Jeremiah actually sets her up with this woman who tests her and finds out that she's dyslexic and can give her the tools to then be able, and she has a really high IQ.
You need to find tools always, find the tools.
Like, you are not stupid. You are very smart. And it totally, you could see this woman suddenly like change in front of you. And I love that they're not, yes, they're about the fabulous, and I'm going to create this fabulous wedding for you and all these amazing things. But they have these moments with these people that are very empathetic and very sympathetic and very touching. And you can feel that they actually really feel for these people, and it's not just a show.
I love that. I watched one episode.
Yeah. And I think, it's really great. And they do a couple of gay couples on it as well, which I thought was really great, and which also brings up some issues with themselves. you know, and there was it's just they're open with people, like Gabrielle opens up about his HIV positive status,
That's
and yeah, and I was not expecting that, and so when that happened, it was sort of like a shock, and I was like, is this just for show? And then as I watched the episodes, I was like, oh no, these are what these people are. So that's been my moment of joy this past week. So Say I Do on Netflix. There's 8 episodes. They're fun, they're funny, and yeah.
I'm gonna watch them.
So James, what is your moment of joy for this week or these last 2?
I have so many. I have so many great things happening with our community and things. But I'll tell you, it sounds similar to yours, but I haven't been watching a lot of TV in quarantine. I find it hard to. One of the things with my anxiety is I find it hard to watch things that I don't know how they're going to end. So I haven't been really watching a lot of new shows, but Padma Lakshmi has a new show on Hulu called Taste the Nation.
Yes.
It is the most wonderful show because she uses food and her experience as an immigrant in the United States to tell the story of America. And she just speaks to people and learns their food and their culture and their story. And I think it's so important, especially with the way America is right now, to remember that this country was built by immigrants and built by different cultures and diversity, and food is such a connector. And there's so many beautiful examples, but in one of the first episode, she goes to a border town in Texas and to Juarez, Mexico, El Paso and Juarez, and you learn these stories in the food of people. And she spends time with the Navajo, and she spends time with Chinese Americans, and it just is the fabric of who we are.
This is supposed to be the happy segment. Remember, we're ending on the
These are happy tears
Good.
because it is just so beautiful and so important that we remember, as things in our life and our country seem to be so different than what we were raised to believe that it was, that there are still these moments and these magical moments and these people who care and love and share. And I've just found it to be this beautiful example. I'm really into like liberal TV right now. I also watched like the first Zac Efron episode, which is also a liberal. He's so cute, but it's also like a liberal way of like teaching people about why water needs to be a priority and why sustainable energy is essential. But they do it in a way that they're telling these stories that are so easy to connect to because you care about the people. And I just found Taste the Nation is such an important and beautiful show right now. I hope everyone watches it.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's been on my list to watch, and I haven't watched it yet, so that'll be good. I need something good, and I think these are the type of shows that a lot of us need right now. Like we need these shows that aren't about conflict, that aren't about just drama. We need these shows that like show us that what the world should be, what we want the world to be, what the world should be, and also to make us understand like there is this out there. I think we feel so inundated with all of the bad that's coming in, and it's nice to see these stories, to see these love stories, it's whether it's a marriage, whether it's love for food, whether it's love for the environment, like to be able to connect with these stories. And I think it's really important right now to just because we don't always feel that connection right now, so to be able to like have that and have that be the influence that's coming at us right now, I think is really important. I think we need more shows like that. Sadly, they may not be forthcoming for a while, but because can't really go out into communities anymore. But hopefully there will be more like those.
I hope so. Oh, Joe, thank you for this amazing talk. I'm sending you a virtual hug.
You know, a virtual hug.
Oh, yeah, give me a little huggy. Give me a little.
And thank you all for listening or watching us. We are Parallel Drives. We are here twice a month for you, talking about our lives, our experiences. I'm Joe Duke II. This is James Vincent. We are happy to come into your homes every 2 weeks and just share a little bit about ourselves. We'll be back in another 2 weeks. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or iTunes or iHeartRadio. You can watch this on my YouTube channel. And we look forward to doing this in another couple of weeks for you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. We'll see you guys in a few weeks.
Bye.
Bye.